Okay, good evening, everyone, or good day, depending on where you are. I imagine, Dan, you're likely joining, so it's like good morning, and good whatever time it is to every one of you that has taken the time to join. And for those of you that are catching it later, by all means, please don't forget, I appreciate comments, I appreciate your interaction, and yeah, definitely look forward to it. I'm hoping I've got all of the echoes and all of the sound issues and everything else that's whatnot occurring these days when I'm trying to stream. I hope I've got them fixed. But anyway, I imagine somebody will jump into the chat and let me know if I'm not fixed. So far, everything looks good. Yeah. So, yeah, today, yeah, let's talk about it and we'll get started here. Depends which way you want to look at it. I thought of like, do I want to have a nice fancy, oh, well, hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks that the audio's fine and drive safely, mate. Yeah, please. But I started off with this flowery title of treating your ailing safety culture and let the healing begin. It sounds a bit smarmy, I understand, but realistically, tonight is not necessarily, or today, or this stream, this podcast is not necessarily about fixing everything right off the bat. The truth be known is that I have this saying, and for those of you that disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. I appreciate it. But my saying is that if something took a period of time to become either negative, positive, whatever the case, or apathetic, then the length of time that you're going to have to take to fix it and correct it is going to be directly reflective. So if a safety culture eroded over a period of 5 years, you cannot expect to fix it overnight. So more apt to have called this, let's talk safety culture first aid, hence the thumbnail. Sorry, dry here in Calgary. I'll be sipping water in a bit, or for a bit. Yeah, so yeah, let's get on with it. And first things first, let's be reasonable. Let's talk about the chat rules, because for those of you that are joining as brand new, or for some of you that have been around a while, it's still important that we go over them. First and foremost, by all means, introduce yourself. Introductions are nice. And for those of you catching it after, and if you want to leave a comment in the chat, or comment, by all means, do so, please. I appreciate comments. Yeah, they're wonderful. And honestly, they help me because I have a bearing and an understanding of what you're doing, or who you are and how the stream is doing, pardon me. Now, for those of you that are in the chat, you want to weigh in, by all means, please just introduce yourself, talk in the chat, by all means. Like to know who you are, where you're from, what you do, etc. Gives me a better idea, especially if questions get asked. Same thing, like I said, in the comments. The other thing, please ask and answer. I don't mind dialogue going on in the comment section or the chat section at all. By all means, your knowledge and your opinions count. And in past streams, we've had some very lively discussion take place right in the chat. And I appreciate that. I like it. It's neat to see. Keeping in mind that I'm not the be-all to end-all, and I'm certainly not this great font of information. I just share my experiences, a lot of my failures, and how I've benefited from them, and hopefully you can too. Now, the other thing about that is be civil. No name-calling, no insults. It seems this world, honestly, I almost think it's like kind of an end times goal for mankind, is to figure out new ways to divide ourselves. But for this channel, in my little microcosm, let's be civil. No name-calling, no insults. I started this channel to form a community, so let's be communal. Let's be nice to each other, okay? Just humor me. And of course, the other thing is, this is not professional advice. There's no money changing hands. There's no contracts being signed. basically, this is a culmination of other people and other people's experiences, a forum, if you will. So if I say I would do it this way, or I would do something this way, or I think you would be better off to do this, that's my personal opinion from what I've learned over the years, not meant to be professional advice. I hope that's clear. And, well, if it's not, I'm sorry. But anyway, it's not professional advice. So once again, when we get into this, we have to understand that there's always things changing and always stuff that's new. First thing I want to talk about, and I just want to talk about this for a sec, it does lead to safety culture and it does parallel with what we're doing, but it also, it's partly about safety leadership and how owners, foremen, supervisors, directors, etc., those of you that are monitoring the work of others, you can do better. So let's just have a look. So here we are, and ignore the video. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I think it's Global's opportunity to get some more views and clicks. But yes, this is compliments of Global News. Incidentally, for those of you that are outside of Canada, and for those of you that don't notice in Canada, Google and the Canadian government have come to, and I really don't like this idiot, so I'm going to have to really get this over with quick. They've come to an agreement where Google's going to pay the Canadian government, who's going to funnel it into news companies. So we won't see our news disappearing from Google. But anyway, a lack of workplace safety led to a foreign worker's death at a Quebec farm. So here's what's disheartening. A 34-year-old Guatemalan worker last year ended up dying. And part of it was, it's twofold, really, and truthfully, and I'll show you in the article. Partly because of the way the machinery is, and some of the warning labels and warning signs on it were illegible. And you'll find out a bit more, but it's a family-run dairy and field crop farm located in Quebec. And here's what I also found is unusual. We have Matthew Ruel and Daniel Lemieux found, they're the CNET officers who were inspecting this or investigating it. And usually you don't see that unless a communications person is doing the talking. It's very unusual that they name the inspectors in something, but well, who am I? Anyway, one of the things, if you see there, is that the emergency label on the machine indicating the risks involved using the mixer was illegible. That's really disconcerting. Now, these were part of the contributing factors to the person's death, and his body was found the next morning. So I just look at this as quite gruesome, and the amount time that he was likely there, and nobody knew. But he would do this as his morning task. He would get all of the food ready for the cattle using the mixer to combine the different nutrients. And he would work alone. So, number one, foremen, supervisors, make sure all of those workers under your care that you have some sort of check-in. In fact, yeah, and welcome, Jeff. Unfortunately, agriculture sectors in almost every jurisdiction in Canada need some work. Even in British Columbia, the same thing. And British Columbia has some of the strictest health and safety legislation in the country, but it still needs a lot of work. So I agree with you, Jeff. Thank you. But his clothing caught on a moving part and drug him into the mixer where he died. And I just think that's unimaginable. But here's something else, and I highlighted it. He was using a translation app on his phone to translate instructions from French to Spanish. And he eventually learned some French and would translate French to the other foreign workers on the site. This is the disconcerting thing. And I don't mean to point fingers or disparage anybody, but for goodness sakes, if you're going to be hiring foreign workers, make sure that they understand everything And if you have to post signage in 2 or 3 languages, you're going to have to do it, because company owners, employers, foremen, supervisors, you're directly responsible for the health and safety of all of those workers under your authority and care. And if they can't read the safety warnings or the instructions on the machinery, or they don't know how to read the safe work procedures, you know what? You're negligent, not them. You're negligent. Okay? You're employing them. Here's another little bit that, and realistically, something as a bit of trivia. Homicides and workplace deaths are measured the same per 100,000 people that have died. And so for per 100,000 people working, for 100,000 farm workers in Quebec, 16 are killed in workplace accidents every year. 174 are hospitalized. But let's look at the big picture here. Up to 80% of the people who suffer workplace injuries in Montreal are immigrants. Now, I know Montreal is just one city in Quebec, but look at it as a demographic, okay? 80% of the people are immigrants. So, and I don't mean to disparage the French, but guys, English is spoken in more places on the planet. And if you're going to allow for foreign workers to come into the province, then for goodness sakes, start to relax a bit or something. Or make sure that the common language of the workplace is also addressed. Yeah, Jeff, exactly. And those are the reported ones. Realize one thing, that if you, as the employer and as the trickle-down and cascading effect, directors, managers, supervisors, if you're not taking those necessary steps and showing that actual genuine concern for the workers under your care, that also lends to your workplace safety culture swirling the bowl and heading into the sewer quick. Okay, so just a tip, just think about it. And like anything else, if you're working on your safety culture, then everything else falls into place, as I've demonstrated before. Just a quick report on the hazard assessment series I'm doing. And for those of you that are just joining, I've had a few requests from different viewers and even friends that I should do, how do I term this? I don't want to say like a formal course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to live stream on Thursdays, starting in the new year, for hopefully no more than an hour, and do a class on hazard assessment, right from what a hazard assessment is all the way up to the different types and how you manage, how risk is quantified and qualified, and different ways to create and use a risk matrix, and do the whole thing. So hopefully it'll run over about 12 weeks. I'll do it once a week, and I've got 3 or 4 weeks, I think, done so far. So I'm hoping to get the rest done through the Christmas season and just before the new year. So hopefully the middle of January I'll start, and it's going to follow this premise. It's just going to be a quick presentation. And for the first course, the second one and third and all the successive ones after that will have a recap of the previous course. There will be the opportunity to ask questions and answers through the chat or in the comment section for those that catch it later. Any late comments are going to be addressed in the following live stream. There will be a short quiz of anywhere from 3 to 5 quick questions at the end, just as a way to build it. Now, will it be a formal course? No, I don't know. I call it what you will. But realistically, if you were to want to sound brilliant to any of your peers and somebody says, yeah, Jeff, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And you know what? It really doesn't. I've got a gig working in healthcare, and in healthcare, you see a lot of foreign workers doing the same thing, whether it be nursing, housekeeping, etc. And Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Thanks for the encouraging words. But I agree with you in the fact that incidents concerning immigrants and the fact that English is a second language or English being a foreign language is not addressed in the workplace, at least in safe work procedures. I mean, if English is spoken, like a lot of healthcare, English will be the required language of the workplace. Where in my province, in Alberta, in Quebec, obviously it'll be French. But the safe work procedures should be addressed or translated into a common language if needed. Especially since, Google Translate, you can do so much over your phones these days. There's no excuse. Anyway, getting back to the hazard assessment bit, if you want to sound brilliant in front of your peers, and they ask you, well, what is health and safety? Honestly, and this is a Kevinism, go ahead, download the transcript, copy it, steal it, don't care. Health and safety is this. It's the identification of hazards, assessing them for probable risk, and then applying controls to alleviate that risk by elimination or at least controlling it reasonably so that work can continue safely. That's it. And so hazard assessment really is the foundational element of health and safety. If you're not identifying hazards, assessing them for risk, and then applying controls, then you're not doing health and safety. It's that simple. So that's why there's that importance of hazard assessment, and that's why I'm going to be doing it. Now, if it's successful, then what I'll do is start developing other mini podcasts, courses, whatever we want to call them, for other elements such as worksite investigation, and inspections and other things. And we'll see how it goes. If it works good, I'll work out that way. Oh, no, not at all, Jeff. That's the whole thing behind this. I want it so it's like a community thing. Not at all. Dan, he's driving. I'm hoping he's not typing. So usually he's hopping in and typing too. I've had a few people do it, so don't worry about it. Not at all. Anyway, moving right along. The other thing is, I will put this in the description later, but I developed this video just as a way to address Toolbox talks and some terrible ones. Honestly, I've been through some. Excuse me while I get a drink. That I think I rather watched paint dry or grass grow. They were that bad. And as a colleague of mine said, his experience with Toolbox talks is people are just in a hurry to get out of there, so they're not listening and not paying attention. But really and truthfully, you can do a lot, and I'll talk more about this in this video, with a good Toolbox talk. So I will put the link to this video in the description after the stream's over. And I like to try to feature at least one featured video throughout each live stream. Now, other things that are coming up, I'm going to have a conversation with another safety professional who works in heavy construction in the Lower Mainland in British Columbia and working on some very big projects right now. And we've had lots of talks regarding safety culture, hazard assessment, all sorts of things. But I want to interview him and do a podcast with him, just seeing his take on safety culture and some of the different subjects. So I'm going to be sometime around January or so, maybe. And then the other thing, I'm still looking for a conflict resolution specialist or professional to come in, because a lot of our work, if we can avoid conflict as safety professionals, our job will be so much easier, because let's face it, we end up with a lot of conflict. We do. And so seeing if I can get somebody that can give us some pointers and tips. Couple of other things I'm looking at is a couple of heavy construction, Jeff, you bet. An ex-police officer, and seeing if I can, or even one that's currently working for a force. I've got a few irons in the fire who can talk about interaction between safety professionals and serious investigations where there's OHS and a criminality to it or a fatality. And a lot of times they'll have to run parallel. And I've got a few other irons in the fire, but it's too early to say right now, because I like the idea of having a guest spot every once in a while on the podcast. Yeah. So that's what's coming up. Oh, Jeff. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. So, just as a recap, what we've looked at so far, and understanding that, you know what, as a safety professional, you're going to look and say, oh, I think we got a problem, but how do we deal with it? And so we first started off, and I talked about looking at it anecdotally first. Before you decide, well, we got a problem and start throwing money and work and time and everything after it, have some conversations. Consider where you're going to collect your data. And then start collecting the data. And I talked about some of the signs and symptoms, and we'll touch on those in just a bit. The other thing is looking at everything, not just paperwork, but not just people and not just conversations, taking the whole works. When you go to the doctor, they start with talking to you, developing a history, and then they're going to start with the diagnostics, the pulse oximetry, the blood pressure, taking blood tests, doing CBCs, and all of that stuff to make a determination. So you can't single-mindedly walk into something. You have to sort of look at the big picture. And then establish your signs and symptoms, and then review them and think, okay, what do I need to attack? So for tonight, we're going to talk about the safety culture and these different things and some ways that you can quickly fix them, some of those symptoms of the ailing safety culture. Once again, a culture is just a group of people that have a common perception about life, per se. And so a safety culture, oh, hey, Jeff, I'm a core auditor and yes, we could definitely talk about that. Good idea. Yes, you and I'll have to touch base after this. Not immediately after the stream, but I'll reach out and hit you up through your YouTube link or something. A safety culture is basically a group of people or an organization that place a high value on safety and believing in the benefits of practicing safety, and being genuine about it. Not and I've seen a lot of people who are, yeah, we're safety here, and then are not, for obvious reasons. So, as I said, putting everything together, all of the safety vital signs that you're looking at, and then considering what are your telltale signs and symptoms. And so one is, like, what are your injury rates? And I talked about that. I talked about how they're going to be up, they're going to be likely misreported or underreported, but you'll still have a lot of people off. Now, I'm not going to touch and address reducing injury rates in this stream because, and I know this may sound weird, but if you're dealing with everything else and improving your safety culture and starting to put Band-Aids on things, you're going to see a change right away. It's like when you have severe infection, all of a sudden the antibiotics kick in and everything starts to feel a lot better. Same thing. If we start to deal with some of the other things that I'm going to talk about, well, you start to see a change right away. I talked about a dysfunctional joint health and safety committee, and we're going to address all of these in this stream with some quick fixes, some Band-Aids, if you will. And how... Yeah, unfortunately, Jeff, I've been through that too. But health and safety committees are the stewards of the health and safety programs in your workplace. They're one of the driving forces, if not the major driver, of a good safety culture. They're the ambassadors of safety. They're the eyes, ears, and face of safety often. They're even thought of as safety professionals in a lot of different groups. So having a dysfunctional health and safety committee is a bad thing. And then beyond that, the next thing is executive apathy. And just as Jeff mentioned in the chat, where an employer tells them it's cheaper to pay fines than to spend money on health and safety, which is, and there's so much empirical proof where that's so totally wrong. But once again, it's a mindset that you've got to turn and try and change. And so I've got some tricks that you can use for executive apathy. But once again, when people are dead set, it's like you've met those people that are hell bent on destruction. And, oh, hey, Jeff, sorry about that. And yeah, by all means, it will be on YouTube. So yeah, just take a look. And then, yes, please leave comments and then go to the channel page, my web for the YouTube channel, and you'll find my email address there. So cheers. Yes, take care. But there is no surefire way to cure some executive apathy when they don't want to be cured. We've met those people that are hell-bent on destruction, and nothing really changes them. Now, one of the other dangers, of course, is punitive action versus proactive action for health and safety infractions. And the idea of writing tickets and writing people up versus, well, asking why. And we'll talk about that in a bit. The other thing is a disengaged workforce. And it gets to the point where even the people that are in a bad safety culture, the people that are super dedicated to safety start to get apathetic too and ambivalent towards it if they're in that climate long enough. It's, as somebody once said, take the saint out of church and keep him amongst sinners, he'll eventually be a sinner himself. I'm not going to get into theology, but it's the same idea. Work in a sewer all the time and never come out, you're eventually going to get dirty. Now, the other thing is production over safety, but now production is necessary, but where safety is not valued whatsoever, it's all the total focus is on production. Safety is not talked about, not mentioned. The other thing is, with safety not being mentioned, it's not part of the mission, vision, and values. And if it's absent from the mission, vision, and values, you got trouble. You do. You honestly have trouble. So, first and foremost, the disengaged Health and Safety Committee. The very first thing you do is start with the terms of reference. Is there one? Or have the existing Health and Safety Committee even been paying attention to it? You might have to blow off the dust, sweep off the dust, open it up, see if it's written in this decade, and then start to work. But if not, create one. Work with the committee. Get them creating one that aligns with the local OHS requirements, and then add things like special meetings and defining what timely means. Above all and beyond all, consider adding points and codicils regarding worker and employer relations. In other words, making it a point. The idea is health and safety committees are a bipartisan collaborative group, enabling the employer to deal with those health and safety problems and issues. And so build your terms of reference and build one that's robust and going to work. Now, the other thing is schedule regular meetings. Have they been happening already? Most health and safety committees, one of the that are dysfunctional, one of the problems that they have and they never got over is they have had good intentions and scheduled themselves with meetings, but they were impractical. There was a schedule that we're going to meet every 3 weeks, or we're going to meet every month, or whatever the case may be. And yes, in some jurisdictions, say British Columbia, for instance, you have to meet every month. I understand that. But they also put upon themselves a burden that they can't pack. So make sure that their meetings are scheduled regularly in a way that becomes practicable. And do what's doable. And then add into your terms of reference exceptions for things like special meetings. Say, for instance, in your jurisdiction, you're able to meet quarterly as a health and safety committee. But if you've met in January on the 15th and January 20th, there's an accident, do you seriously want to wait until March to review that incident report? Or do you want to deal with it right away? So have those special meetings. And when you start to create an environment that organizes engagement and directs that engagement, then you end up with engagement. It's just that simple. Now, the other thing is, do you have dead weight? I mean, I've worked with health and safety committees. I've built a career on resurrecting poor safety cultures and underperforming and malperforming Safety committees. One of the things I found is they have dead weight. Well, I've been around here for 30 years, and they're stuck 30 years ago. Now, not saying that dedicated people should be removed or anything else like that. By all means, keep them around. However, do you have ineffective people there? And start to look at it. Do your action items, hang on just a sec, got to move something. There we go. Do they have action items that are repeating monthly and they're the same action items on the minutes? Do they seem to be just there for the rest, the time off work? Are you keeping them around because they're a nice guy or gal, but that's the only reason that they're there? They're funny, they're entertaining during meetings, but if they're not getting anything done and not bringing anything productive to the table, why do you have them there? So the other thing you want to do is write into your terms of reference some methodology for a term of office, but also write it so that you don't end up with brain drain. Like, you don't want to have to be rebuilding a new committee every 3 years or every 2 years or something to that effect. So construct your terms of reference with those things in mind. Now, the other thing is work to improve those employer and joint health and safety committee relations. One of the problems that health and safety committees have is they think when they make a recommendation to the employer, even though in pretty much every jurisdiction in Canada, and as far as OSHA goes, with where they're required to have health and safety committees, it's sort of addressed in the legislation, but it doesn't mean that that the employer has to genuflect and is subservient to you as a health and safety committee. No, you collaborate and you make recommendations to the employer. The employer can answer that recommendation and come back and say, well, how about we do this? It'll do the same thing. So the idea is form your terms of reference so that you can also improve employer and joint health and safety committee relations. Okay? Remembering, once again, you as a health and safety committee, your purpose is to work with the employer to create a safer, healthier working environment. And the committee, if you start to view yourself as stewards of the health and safety program, as being ambassadors to safety versus a way of getting out of work, and you know what? Things will change. It's going to make a difference. It's going to start, and it'll be a visible change. It won't happen overnight. It won't happen just like that. It's going to take some time, but you'll start to notice change. Now, one other thing you're going to have to deal with is executive apathy. Like I said, once again, part of the issue is you need to increase awareness with the executive, with the C-suite people, with the directors, with the managers, senior managers, etc., with all of those folks that are distanced a bit from the front line. Now, if safety isn't high up on the awareness level within the organization, if it's not front of the face, it's not going to be front of the mind. Okay, that's just plain and simple. So getting safety on meeting agendas is a good start. And you may have to say, here is our monthly safety stats. Here's our monthly report. Here's everything. Here's a quick summary. If you wouldn't mind reading it, you might have to do, as safety professionals, as people tasked with safety, you might have to do some of that groundwork. Now, here's the absolute truth. The reward for a good job is more work. In other words, if you do it well a couple of months in a row, they're not going to do it themselves. They'll just expect you to give it to them. But guess what you've done? You've now put safety on the radar where it wasn't before. And it gives you the opportunity, if safety is tracking upwards, or worse, if injuries are tracking upwards, hey, director, VP, AVP, whoever, I just want to bring it to your attention, the last couple of months, if you've noticed when I've been giving you the summaries, that it's tracking up. The injuries are tracking up. We've got a problem. So you could say, for instance, we could drop if we drop those injuries, if we look after, say, some of the soft tissue injuries and we start grabbing that low-hanging fruit, which is incidentally a lot of the injuries, we could reduce our premiums by X number of dollars. And the moment you start to bring money into the picture, executives start to listen. Now, the other thing is safety professionals need to be included at some stage during the planning. Okay? And let's be honest here, this one is hard. We will spend our careers mopping up mistakes and disasters that could have been easily alleviated had we been at the planning table. I had a director once make fun of me at a planning meeting when I mentioned something to that effect, where we had just had a couple of issues, and I said, well, if we had been at the planning, we wouldn't have let that happen. And of course, in his usual passive-aggressive bullying tactics, he made quite a good chuckle and made mention that, yeah, Kevin's the hero, and if he had been there, he would have fixed everything. And, well, the shoe was quickly on the other foot when, not even a week later, one of his main contractors on a building upgrade that was being done caused a huge electrical accident that could have burnt half the building down. And had it not been caught in time. And, well, we took advantage, and this is quite mean, but I had the safety professional working under me. We took advantage between the two of us in writing that incident report and everything, showing how if we had been part of the planning as the corrective action and we outlined the corrective actions that had been put forward, had we known about it and been at the table, maybe we could have alleviated this. So, yeah, we ended up at the table after the accident. Go figure. But if you can sort of use that same thing and flip that script a bit and start using your incident investigations and doing those investigations properly, drilling down, asking your 5 whys, whatever it is, however you want to get to root cause, but addressing all the causal factors, but also showing how planning could have changed that. Because realistically, we all know as safety professionals, there's no such thing as an accident. All there is poor planning. That's it. It in a nutshell. Now, the other thing is to put safety on the corporate communications. Once again, this is where you're going to have to do a bit of work. Working with, if you have somebody in communications or whatever the case may be, I don't like safety doing a safety monthly newsletter or a weekly newsletter or something, and I'll tell you why. Because something invariably will happen that'll reprioritize your needs elsewhere. You'll be drawn away from it, and you'll be distracted for whatever reason. Or the person behind it moves on, or you get promoted, or something occurs, and all of a sudden that person that was the energy behind it goes down. If there can be a way that it can be a group thing or something to do with, say, maybe the Health and Safety Committee, doing up a monthly blurb to put out there as part of the corporate communications. And then that way it becomes a task of the Health and Safety Committee, and it becomes something that's now sustainable versus the safety professional doing it. And the other thing is if you're not a talented corporate communications writer, it's going to, like me, it's not going to be that good. Okay? I was fortunate in a previous gig I had, 2 previous gigs. Both of the admin assistants that worked for me were talented writers, and they did work well. So whenever I had to do something, I always passed it by them, and they made me sound fabulous. But I don't have that now. So once again, ChatGPT helps to a certain extent, but if you make it part of your committee thing and then make it shifted into corporate communications, even if it's the Health and Safety Wellness Bulletin, the Health and Safety Bulletin from the Health and Safety Committee, and it's part of the corporate communications, guess what? Now there's an awareness of safety. And if there's an awareness of safety, guess what? It's on the radar. And not just your radar, but everybody's radar. Now, a big one that bothers me is punishment for safety issues. You need to change the focus from punishment to learning. Now, I will be the first to tell you that yes, there are needs at times to punt people and send them down the road to be somebody else's problem when they're being negligent. They're being purposefully unsafe. Whether they've got their own personal death wish or a total disregard for anybody else. But we do you have those people. We've all had them. So yes, but most of the time, nobody wakes up and goes, yeah, I think I'll get injured irreparably this morning. Nobody does. Okay? So most people want to do the right thing. They want to work safely. So right off the bat, when the unsafe acts happen, I got to ask you, let me ask you, what would happen if we started asking why this person has done what they've done? Instead of punishing them or firing them or saying you're going to get written up for this or you're going to be a letter on your file with HR. Well, a big surprise. If we started looking at where the system failed, why did they do this? Why were they not trained well enough to do this? It might have been the initial orientation. Well, you got to go back and fix that up. Or it might have been during the probationary period. Or you might also find it's a lackadaisical supervisor who really doesn't care and says, well, I know how to do this stuff. This stuff's easy. And they never bothered teaching the person well enough. But whatever the case may be, and it brings me to the next piece, instead of write-ups, look at opportunities to understand why. If in fact, and now, as far as the write-ups go, a lot of organizations look at them like tickets. Here you go, here's your ticket. You've been bad, I'll take my carbon copy or whatever. Look at that similar to an incident report. And then drill down. Ask yourself why. Maybe even ask yourself why 5 times. Why that happened. Why that person did what they did. Why that situation occurred the way it did. Why that incident occurred. Why that unsafe act occurred. And you know what? You might find things are different. Not only that, when people aren't looked at as your fault, we want to find out why this happened. That turns the safety culture on its ear real quick as well. So increase your focus on training and engaging training. For God's sakes, don't make it so boring that people are going to be anxious to escape. Okay? And if they are, why is that? Go look in the mirror. Okay? If you are like Ferris Bueller's teacher, anyone, then you're not going to have anyone. Okay? So try a little humor or something. And as I said, I'll leave a link in the description for a quick video guide I made on doing engaging Toolbox talks. But once again, this brings me to disengaged workers and supervisors. So you can engage workers during Toolbox talks. As I said, I did a video on this and I'll leave it in there in the description. But there's a few things, okay? First off, number one, keep it short, okay? For goodness sakes, if you're going to prattle on for a long time about nothing, or you feel you have to fill the silence with your voice, you're making a big mistake. I had a prof once say to me, Kevin, you have a unique ability to say in a paragraph what everybody else says with a grunt. And I took it to heart. So look at your Toolbox talk to be no more than 5 to 7 minutes. Leave it at that. Okay, try that on for size. But then also make it relevant and relatable to the workers. If you have a group of people that are construction workers and they're going to be doing some, let's say, so they're residential construction, they're going to be doing some house framing. We use this as an example. Are you going to talk to them about workstation ergonomics? No. Pick a subject that means something to them. Make it relatable to them and make it relevant. Don't talk about injury rates from 10 years ago. Talk about them today. Okay? And a few jokes doesn't hurt either, as long as they're not tasteless and offensive. Now, the other thing is solicit their opinions and ask for solutions. When you've said, okay, you want to address a Toolbox talk with the problem that you have, by all means. Good way to open up. But when you engage workers with a solution, in other words, what do you think? What do you think? Here's my idea. Does anybody else have any ideas? But on the same token, after your toolbox talk, just stop somebody and say, hey, just want to know, just gauging things. How do you think that went? Now, chances are they're likely going to be polite. But if they are candid and they will say that, well, it sucked, you take the high road and say, okay, why and what could I do better? I had a coach say to me once, take the L and train harder. So don't be thinking you're the be-all to end-all. Everybody has a tip, okay? I have a colleague that I work with, and we both will make training videos. And no matter what, I ask him his opinion, and I value it because good, this was bad, this is what I would do, this is what I think you might want to do, etc. He gives me a very objective opinion, and I value that. So if a worker tells you that I found it boring, you got to do something, well, then there you go. Ask them for solutions. Now, the other thing is, during toolbox talks, or if you're monitoring workers, or if you're doing your own safety walkabouts, don't use the legislation or your collective bargaining agreement as a stick. Use it as a carrot. Figure out a way to flip the script. A lot of times what you'll have to do is take that area of non-compliance and show why compliance is better for them and the organization. And hey, if anyone wants to think up an example, you go ahead, leave it in the comments by all means. Yeah, leave me a comment. Okay, so here's a formula for engagement. Okay, and honestly, this works well. I've followed this ever since, and this isn't a Kevinism. I was in some sort of a leadership course. It was through Royal Roads, and I was in some sort of a course, and one of the facilitators put this on the board, and it just stuck in my head. But authorship, okay, leads to or coupled with ownership. So if people feel that they're part of something, so when you're getting worker input into writing a program, when you're getting worker input to creating a safe work procedure, when you're getting worker input into anything, guess what? They feel that they're an author to it. And like anything else, if we are feeling that we author our own destinies, we feel this autonomy, we feel like empowered. Guess what? They now feel that they have ownership of your safety program, of your safe work procedure, of whatever it is you're doing, the hazard assessment, whatever. And with authorship leading to ownership, guess what? You have commitment. Okay? There is no two ways about it. Now, I don't mean if you've got 2,000 people under you, you don't need to consult 2,000 people. But start grabbing groups of workers that you know have a lot of knowledge about a certain thing, especially when you're creating safe work documents. If you're trying to do it alone, guess what? You will fail. I don't care who you are. Your amount of failure may be not nearly as much as mine, but you're going to fall down. Okay? I recently just created a policy for the church I attend regarding something, and it went through a couple of other people. And then when I said, okay, well, let's vote on it, one person put up their hand and said, oh, you left out this one position here with your policy. But good thing we didn't vote upon it and then find out we're trying to use that as our operational process afterwards. So don't write everything yourself. Get that worker involvement. And when you do that, you have engagement. Guess what? Safety starts to get on the radar even more. Now, with the idea of production priorities over safety, you need to shift the focus using money. And here's a simple fact. A 1% increase in workers' compensation insurance means a lot. Okay? And just use a simple matter, and a lot of managers, a lot of supervisors, a lot of directors don't even know this, is that in most cases, especially in Canada, you basically have a 3-year process. When you get injured and you get a surcharge, a rate surcharge or a rate increase, it takes 3 years before it starts to drop. Now, if you get another injury within that time, after a year, say, guess what? Now you're going to see a 4-year wait, or you're going to see a multiplication, and then start to see added drops in 3 years and then 4 years. So you can use that as a focus, because right now you can make a whole pile, a lot of money, but if you have a lot of injuries eating into that, you're not making as much money as you think. Not only that, and if you use the idea of accentuating risk versus profit, you can also let people know that, and just simply if you have to, and I should have had a diagram for this, bird's triangle, we've all seen it, where we have the 600 injuries or 600 near misses on the bottom, close calls. Then we have 30 minor injuries or injuries involving property damage. Then we have 10 first aids or injuries where people are able to return to work in their previous capacity. And then you have 1 fatality. Well, that 1 fatality can stop production for a long time. And for every day production stopped, well, there you go. The other thing is, let them know simply that workers that are well and feeling secure, think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we have the base physiology, that water, food, shelter, looked after. The very next tier on it is safety and security. Workers who feel safe and feel secure are productive workers. It's honestly, it's not rocket science. And I've left links in previous live streams and previous videos before. And honestly, they're not. Well workers are profitable and productive workers. That's it in a nutshell. Now, the other piece is safety is not in the corporate philosophy. One of the biggest ways that you can do something to fix it is understand the chain of command and know how to use it. Your boss has a boss. Okay? And not only that, his or her boss has a boss, and so on. So you can work to get safety to a point of awareness in the C-suite by just talking. And what I mean by C-suite, CFO, CAO, CEO, COO, all of those chief operating, executive, financial, all of those chief positions. But you need to work your way up there sometimes through the chain of command. And now, when you get the C-suite talking, it makes a difference. You may not get on the next vision casting or strategic planning part. Who knows? Maybe you might. But if you can get safety on the radar, just as we talked about before, then that makes a big difference. So use that chain of command. The next thing is when you're doing your health and safety stuff, when you're creating, whether it be a new policy, you're revisiting the policy and recreating the policy, whatever the case, align safety with your mission, vision, and values. If it isn't, and chances are, if you have a bad or ailing safety culture, number one, it's not part of the corporate philosophy to begin with. But number two is, those that came before you, and I went through this, I suffered this, haven't worked to make safety part of the corporate philosophy, haven't worked to align safety with the corporate philosophy. So you can do it and then figure out how to shoehorn your way in there through that. And so no matter what, if it means massaging the wording a bit, either way, to gain some alignment. Now take, for instance, this. Your corporate philosophy might be to provide the public and the customers with the best product in the most efficient way and keep the costs low to increase affordability. Well, to me, by all means, guess what? That means also reducing injuries, as a result, decreasing premiums, and creating a more productive workforce. Win-win. So if you can align that previous wording of, I haven't seen any corporate philosophy, I'm just using this as an example, providing the public or your customers with the best product in the most efficient way to keep costs low, then you can align your corporate philosophy or your safety philosophy with, Our corporation has got that commitment to providing the best product possible to customers while keeping products low. So we want to create the safest and healthiest workplace possible in order to keep our costs down and have productive workers to allow us to do that. There you go. Win-win. Okay? Now, the next thing is to suggest edits and revisions with the other corporate media. You may not have access to the strategic plan. A lot of times safety doesn't get it. Sometimes I'm given, I can remember once when I was with a large organization, I was given, this is what we want to put in the strategic plan. What do you think? And I made some suggestions. They went, thank you very much. And obviously they, and tossed. But at least I was given the opportunity. They still went with what they did, but that meant to me that I've actually sort of maybe not got a place at the table, but I can send a message to the table. Okay? So suggest edits and revisions, areas where you have that authority and control, and then use that chain of command to make those other ones for, say, external safety blurbs or things that go on some of the external media that may be used. Once again, positive awareness at the C-suite level earns you sort of that ancillary bonus with safety because guess what? You've put it on the radar again. Because the problem might not be that safety's missing, it's just likely no awareness that it was ever there. Okay? So, now, if you've followed this channel for a while, you have likely noticed that I've shifted away let me start that again. If you follow this channel for a while, you've likely noticed I've shifted away from just talking about provoking safety to focusing on safety leadership. And that leadership's not necessarily found in positions, titles, designations. It often emerges with people, with workers, doing the right things, saying the right things, and being that example of leadership. In other words, what they're doing is compelling others to follow them. Now, understand that in a true culture or true genuine leadership, safety leadership, that doing that will influence the corporate culture, the safety culture, if you will. And in turn, with a positive culture, it will inspire positive behaviors. And with those positive behaviors, well, it's going to create results that you want. A reduction in incidents, lower injuries, lower rates of absenteeism, increased focus on work, increased productivity, and for the workers, you folks that are like actually driving the bus, the opportunity for you to increase your own promotability within the organization. That's what safety culture does. That's what a robust safety culture does. But, enough of my pontification. Questions, answers. And I haven't received a lot over the last little while as far as how do you do this, what do you think of this, etc. All I've really received is requests for different types of videos and different series to do. So that's it. I haven't found any questions. So maybe I can take away from that the videos that I have out there are actually answering your questions. And I don't see any coming in the chat. However, leave me a comment if you want to know more about things like Certificate of Recognition, CORE. And if I can leave you with this, if you have to write a suggestion for improvement, and I did a video on it just recently giving good safety advice, keep it simple. Do it with 3 ingredients. Don't start with a flowery saying right off the bat, okay? Do it this way. Line up the deficiency. Tell them what they did wrong right off the bat. So start with your deficiency. The next thing, give a doable, practicable, actionable suggestion for improvement. And then follow up as to why it benefits the health and safety management system. Even if it's something as generic as it will help create a safer workplace. That's the secret to giving a good bit of safety advice, a good suggestion for improvement, shall we say. Anyway, I don't see as I've got any questions, so I'll tell you what. Interesting. Oh, I have a question. I'm working for a railroad in San Diego. There are regulations that we have to follow. Do you have criteria for Class 1 railroads? Do I know criteria? No, I don't. And that's an interesting thing, Terry Sue. Here's the reason why. In Canada, railroads, because, and I'm pretty sure, well, you have OSHA to go under, but because they are intermodal, in other words, they cross territories, they fall under federal jurisdiction. And two different ways. They fall under the CLC, the Canadian Labour Code, Part 2, but also there's railway inspectors too. So unfortunately, it's not part of my purvey. Sorry to disappoint you, but thank you for the question. If you do want to pop one into the comments, then by all means, I'll do my best to research it and help you out. By all means. I don't mind at all. I love learning interesting things. Yeah. So, but thank you for your question, and sorry I disappointed you on that one. Any other questions at all? Okay, well, what I'm going to do next is after the Christmas break, the next safety live stream is just going to be Q&A. So by all means, bring your question and answers, and I'll do my best to even research them, Terry Sue, and provide you answers. And I'm going to do a Q&A. That's what next live stream in 2 weeks is going to be about. Okay, yes, please. Please do. But anyway, the next live stream is just going to be a Q&A. So whatever Q&As I get through email, social media, or as comments into this stream or other comments, I'll do those answers. I do occasionally have some that come by way of even my job that sound interesting and they should be addressed. And then I'm going to take a break for Christmas because, well, it's Christmas. And then after that, I'm going to start in with live streams that are going to address each one of the elements in an occupational health and safety management system and how they tie in. If doing it well and following best practices ties in and helps to create that dynamic and healthy, robust safety culture that you want. Because really and truthfully, if you work on creating a good system, it's like sleep, exercise, and diet, and just maintaining that fit lifestyle where you can, all of a sudden you start to function better. It's the same thing. Okay, if you take all of those different elements within your safety management system and get them working in a best practices fashion, it changes things. It really does. So I'm out of water, and if we have no other questions, what I'll do is, I'll sign off. So thank you very much. For those of you that took the time to join, I've seen there's been people come and go and everything. And thank you, Jeff, Terry Sue, Dan, for your interaction in the chat. I look forward to bringing you the next live stream and plenty more. But just once again, please remember that safety leadership thing. Understand and remember that safety leaders aren't necessarily safety professionals. They aren't necessarily managers, supervisors, directors, anything like that. What they are, safety leaders are those people that do the right things at the right time in the right place, regardless of who's watching, and set that a good example. They provoke safety and compel others to follow. So be that safety leader. No matter what, wherever you are, be safe, okay? Take care, and bye for now. Oh. Okay, thank you very much. And Dan, glad you got there safely. Take care, everybody. And wherever you are, have a wonderful day, evening, what have you. And we'll talk again soon.